In a dream I can see you're not far away. Anytime, any place, I can see your face. You're that special one that I've been waiting for, and I hope you're looking for someone like me.
Sega is no stranger to releasing weird shit. Nights into Dreams is weird shit. Made by Sonic Team, Nights is a borderline genreless arcade title originally dropped on Sega's failure, the Saturn. A few years later it would be remastered and re-released on PS2 with some new features, and that version would be brought to the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. Here I'll be talking about the remaster because that's the one I have. Nights is borderline indescribable in genre, with an arcadey feel, some racing elements, and some really vague instructions. Its most notable attribute is its strange dreamlike worlds, but how well does this bizarre mess come together? Is it a dream or a nightmare? Human dreams are created in a place called NiGHTopia, a land full of small creatures named NiGHTopians. Wiseman the Wicked, ruler of nightmares, has been infecting the ideas, which are apparently the personalities of sleeping people, I think. Wiseman creates Nightmarans, effectively anti-NiGHTopians he uses to take over dreams and gain power. Two of these Nightmarans were flying jester-like brothers, Rayala and Nights, the latter of whom betrayed Wiseman to help save dreams and gets locked in a gazebo for this. Two children, Elliot and Clarice, lose at basketball and get stage fright in the real worlds, respectively, and when they sleep for whatever reason, they can't be controlled by Wiseman unlike everyone else, and the two free Nights. It's all just background stuff hidden in the manual and by waiting ages on the title screen. It's a vague premise and it doesn't come up again until the end. It sets up an interesting world to play in, but that's kind of the extent of the story. Functional world building for an interesting world. Nights into Dreams' gameplay loop is even harder to explain than its story. It's simplest to think of each level as a race course. A timer counts down constantly while Nights flies in any direction he wants along a 2D line that weaves through the map. Nights really only has two options outside of movement in any direction: boosting, which speeds him up and defeats some Nightmarans, and drawing loops, which collects objects and sides and destroys any Nightmaran. The goal of each course is to destroy the ideas by feeding them 20 blue orbs. All the other collectibles in the course are tied solely to the ranking system. After the idea is destroyed, Nights can return to the gazebo, which switches the track and resets the timer. Each stage has 4 tracks and a boss, and the whole set needs to be beaten in one run. Makes sense? Kinda? I hope so. The other element to the system is time and rank. The timer doesn't really matter. The game doesn't care about speed for ranking, only points. Running out of time returns Nights to the form of the child the player picked. All points are dropped, but it's possible to recover them. The children can't fly and need to skyrim up walls to return to the gazebo, and are chased the whole time by an alarm clock egg that causes a game over if it catches them. The ranking system is almost entirely based on combos. The optimal strategy is to speedrun the 20 blue orbs, as after the idea is gone, the game goes into bonus time, doubling points, then flying around aiming for combos as long as possible before going to the next phase of the level. Chaining collectibles and flying through rings creates some score multipliers, and the higher the score, the better the rank. While the game itself is very easy if just aiming to clear stages, getting good ranks requires a lot of knowledge of stage layouts and solid control of Nights, almost like Sonic Adventure. It's also worth noting that the final stage of each campaign requires the player to get at least C ranks on every level, although Cs are fairly easy to hit as long as the timer never runs out. There's also a few power-ups, but outside of the ribbon, which lets Nights earn points for doing tricks and loops, what they do is beyond me. There's also a few small segments where the perspective shifts, top-down, from behind, or something more gimmicky. While it sounds complex, the game is actually fairly simple and straightforward, just not very well explained. I'm split on my feelings for the general gameplay. At first I was confused and bored, but as I grew to understand what the game wanted, I found it a little more interesting. It's still fairly dull and crutches on its weird concepts and visuals more than it does its gameplay, but it does kinda have that addictive Zen-like quality to fluidly moving around by learning levels. People who love high score games and time trial type stuff will probably love routing, planning, and executing on it. I'm fairly neutral, I guess. Maybe slightly negative. There were some moments where it struck a chord with me, but many where it just wasn't working at all. It's certainly unique if nothing else. One really unique thing the remake has is the option to play either Brand New Dreams or original Saturn modes. Brand New Dream features widescreen and sharper PS2 graphics that make it feel more Dreamcast than Saturn. It looks good and enhances the weird visuals with better draw distance, although at times the fact that every track is on the same course and they often crisscross can cause some clutter, even in the Saturn version, but the draw distance on the PS2 version doesn't help. Original Saturn version displays it in its original resolution with its original chunky graphics, with a few minor tweaks due to emulation, I assume. Most enemies and other things are scaled sprites, which is a look I kinda like. The remake version of the game carries save data between either version, which is an awesome feature, allowing the player to easily try both looks to compare and decide what looks best. There's some really cool visual elements in stages too, mountains above and below, bending walls, and this weird floor rippling effect, although a lot of the designs, especially some of the bosses, are pretty gaudy. I'm not too wild about the music, a lot of it is pretty cheery and generic, and it all kind of blends together without giving off a real dreamy vibe that the visuals do, but there are a couple songs like Dreams, Dreams, the title theme, that are really good. All of the boss themes are also kind of jams, so I'll give it that as well. The controls are simple enough that it's not really worth discussing, but I'd be remiss not to mention the controller made just for this game, the 3D control pad, which had one of the earliest control sticks on a console game. Apparently Steven Spielberg was one of the first people to ever get to use this controller because he just happened to be visiting Sega during the game's production, so the controller has the internal name the Spielberg controller among Sega staff at the time. The game has 2 routes to choose from, each with 3 unique levels and 1 shared. The player is free to switch between either Claris or Elliot's route at any time, and both characters play identically. Levels are unlocked linearly for each route independently. Clear? Clear. We'll start with Claris as her route is on the left and is slightly easier, meaning she's probably meant to be played first. Plus Elliot's third boss is the second in command, a Wiseman. Her first stage is Spring Valley, the ideal. Spring Valley being the location, and the ideal being the metaphorical meaning, apparently Claris wanting to live up to her father, her ideal. And this is a recurring theme in the stage names that's kind of just like weird background details. Spring Valley is probably the most normal stage in the game. There's no gimmicks, the routes are short and don't overlap very much, which keeps things looking relatively clean, and it has a fairly relaxing quality about it with the grass and windmills and hills and relaxing river. It kinda has a Sonic Adventure feel that I dig. The stage also appears as a racing course in Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transform, a game that I absolutely love as Dream Valley. The stage's boss is Gilwing, a gaudy neon dragon. Gilwing swims in a circle around the stage and can be damaged by paralooping his tail, which kills him instantly, or by boosting after grabbing his head a handful of times. His only actual method of damaging knights is just to kind of float into him, so he's not very threatening or cool. Spoiler, most of the bosses in the game are as lame as Gilwing, but there's a couple exceptions. Mystic Forest, the Possibility, is a charming forest covered in out-of-place traffic signs and signals. As much as it seems like the laps will blur together, the stage actually has a few good gimmicks, vines to bounce off of, reminiscent of Sonic, and a horrible top-down segment. I guess the top-down segment isn't that horrible, the controls are functional, it's just really slow, which is very weird for a game that's generally actually pretty fast. This little segment also has a car that slowly follows knights around, and you can get a bunch of bonus points and an achievement for guiding it into a garage. Also, a weird fact about this stage, the song is called Gloom of the NHC, which apparently stands for National Highway Corporations. The stage's theming is comfortable and nice, it's probably my favorite looking in the game. The boss of this dream is Gulpo. Gulpo is a giant fish and swims around in a floating fish tank, and Knights is incapable of reaching him. To damage him, Knights must hit boosters when he's aligned with them to get hits, which also flips him over, allowing for potential follow-ups. The boss isn't really capable of doing anything to Knights, hitting his teeth hurts Knights and costs time, and he can sometimes make the launchers poison to hurt Knights, but the effect only lasts a second or two, so it's pretty easy to avoid it simply on accident. This is probably the weakest fight in the game. Claris's final stage is Soft Museum, the Confusion. There's a really cool effect in this stage where the ground will ripple underneath Knights, kinda like the game is shrinking away from him. The garden areas are nice, but the interior museum areas are a little bland. The floor and ceiling of the museum are all trampolines, which is kind of a fun gimmick for building speed. And there's a little mirror segment where Mirror Knights can keep a combo extended by collecting mirror collectibles. It's kinda cute, but again, the theming of it's all a little bland outside of the shrinking floor gimmick. Soft Museum's boss is Jackal. While not exactly like Knights, he is humanoid and has a rabbit-like mask. He seems to be third in command in Wiseman's army, essentially a failed third brother to Knights, and attacks by throwing tarot cards around. The fight is pretty unique too. Knights needs to hit him in the back to get his cape off of him and then smack him around before he can get it back. If the player's fast, they can get multiple hits in before Jackal gets back to his cape, and it makes it really exciting and tense. It's probably the best fight in the game? I think so. Claris does have a final stage, but the stage is the same as Elliot's, so we'll pin that for a second and jump over to Elliot's stages. Starting with Splash Garden the Affection, which apparently relates to his mother. Like Claris's first stage, it's fairly simple and straightforward. The atmosphere is very relaxing and has a few simple gimmicks. Giant water bubbles that Knights can fly through but that prevent him from turning, and a behind the back underwater section that has the inverse problem of the top down segment. It's a little too fast and chaotic. There's also a clock that reads the system clock and matches it, which is a really neat touch. That was something that Sega Saturn games absolutely love to play with, the system clock, which is, I think, kind of a really cool thing about it. Splash Garden's boss is perhaps the most unique in the game, Puffy. Puffy is immune to damage, but Knights can grab her and launch her, and needs to throw her to the end of the level to defeat her. There's a slight delay to the throw, nothing terrible, but it requires a little adjustment. The fight's unique, but it's nothing, like, crazy. Frozen Belle, the Consciousness, is, as the name implies, a peaceful snow level. There's a bobsled run that's fast and chaotic, but in a fun Sonic 2 bonus stage way. It's probably the least memorable stage visually and in terms of gimmicks. Not terrible, just plain. The boss is Claus with a fucking Z. He's reminiscent of the Cheshire Cat, which, I mean, the Japanese love Alice in Wonderland. Cat's Arena is a carousel lined with firework mice. When Knights approaches Cats, he'll warp away, igniting the mouse fireworks, which need to be dashed into to prevent them from chasing Knights down. Once Cats is out of fireworks to jump to, Knights can dash into him once to take him down. This is probably the second best one in the game after Jackal. It's not too bad, it goes by pretty quick, and it has a little more going on than the average fight in this game. Stick Canyon the Revival has an odd theming choice of desert construction. There's a giant tower central in the desert that Knights needs to fly up, which isn't an insane challenge, but the flying rocks can potentially fuck up the timer pretty bad, which makes this probably the hardest level in the game. There's also weird rail coasters that are affected by physics, so to guide Knights through collectibles and keep the combo going, he'll kinda need to fight against the turns. It feels bad, but in kind of an interesting way, and a lot less so than the swimming section. At the end of Stick Canyon, Knights fights his brother Rayala. The two are twins and have the same powers, effectively. Rayala will fly around and attempt to make loops around Knights, and Knights needs to do the same to him. Rayala needs to be looped 3 times and gets more aggressive after each hit. Mirror battles in games are usually my favorite thing, but in this game, the Rayala fight always feels like it kinda ends up coming down to chance, where either Rayala just fly into Knights' loops incredibly quickly and die in 4 seconds, or he'll always just zip by at the last second and be completely safe. It's okay, it's not terrible. After getting all C's or higher on a route with either character, that character can go to the final stage, Twin Seeds the Growth. Whichever child is controlled, Elliot or Claris attempts to get to Knights to start the level, but is tossed down the building and learns to fly for themselves. The child needs to save Knights by flying through the city they live in, Twin Seeds. The level doesn't have any enemies and has very few obstacles, but it's short on blue orbs and the timer carries over between ideas, making it a full speed race. This is also the easiest stage in the game to A rank. It's virtually free because there's only a few places to get bonus points, and so it kind of just defaults to B or A, B at worst. At the end of Twin Seeds, the chosen child saves Knights and starts the final battle against Wiseman the Wicked. While his body is kind of plain, the 6 hands with eyes are a pretty cool character design element, although he doesn't use them in any way during the fight. Wiseman has 4 attacks that he cycles through randomly, with each having unique patterns and even changing the background of the fight. Wiseman can shoot targeted fireballs that move pretty quickly, slow snowballs that throw Knights around, create rows of meteors that move up and down to weave through, and huge tornadoes with small gaps to squeeze through by boosting. Regardless of his current attack, the child, now transformed into Knights, and the real Knights need to fly to Wiseman to smash his barrier, at which point he'll warp away. It feels a lot like a 3D Sonic boss, especially like Perfect Chaos or BioLizard. It's not difficult, but there is kind of a cinematic quality to it that I like. It's like a mild B for effort. From here, there's 2 endings for each character. Any clear gets the normal ending, getting all A's in a route gets the secret ending. Claris's normal ending has her finally get the courage to sing and she gets a part in a show, while her A ending has her and Elliot meet eyes at the show, recognizing each other from their dreams. In Elliot's normal ending, he plays another game of basketball and gets a slam dunk on the bullies. Elliot's A ending has him attend Claris's show, which ties into her A ending. The story really doesn't matter in this game, it's all window dressing, the endings are cute enough, but it's pretty much all secondary to the spectacle of the game, so I'm not feeling much in either direction on this point. There's another feature of Knights that is important, but tough to tackle. Knightopian A-Life. Those creepy little baby fairies in the background of levels, those are virtual pets, basically prototypes of the Chow from Sonic Adventure. The system has no explanation in game. I barely got an understanding of it, but I somehow got an achievement for doing it, so I fucking did something right. Each Knightopian has a mood that's affected by doing tricks for them or hurting them by dashing near them. The general mood of Knightopians slightly affects the speed and sound of music. By killing Nightmarans, Nightopians will begin to breed into Meepians, which kinda like Chow later have Nightmaran body parts. By breeding Meepians who don't have any shared body parts, it's possible to make a King Pian, which is also still based on chance, with only a 1 in 4 chance of it appearing. King Pians will permanently build castles in the course they appear in, and attack Nightmarans from the background to try to help Knights. Also like Chow, all these little Nightopian dudes die over time. All this is basically background elements. It's fucking bonkers. I've never cared much for virtual pets, and this system is so bizarrely disparate from the game since it's literally in the background that I have no idea what to say about it. I don't get this game element at all. It's something that some Knights fans absolutely love. It's weird. I don't know why it's in here, but it's kind of interesting in its own way. Briefly touching on some stuff outside of the game, there's a lot of speculation that has been made about a cut boss in the game named Self. Knights was obviously heavily influenced by psychology, so it's interesting to think that there was a boss based around fighting the Self. Unfortunately, Knights cut content isn't something I'm incredibly knowledgeable about. There was also a second Knights planned for the Saturn that was apparently going to use motion controls called Air Knights. This project was eventually moved to the Dreamcast before being cancelled. I wasn't really sure where to bring any of this stuff up, so I kinda just put it here, sorry. As I stated before, I played through the Xbox 360 version, which has quite a few unlockables. After clearing both endings, a version of Christmas Nights into Dreams is unlocked, which we'll talk about soon. And clearing that game unlocks the Nightopian collection, a weird viewer for all the game's Nightopians and their status. For people into the A-Life stuff it might be helpful, but it's kinda just an awkward menu for most people. There's also a really well fleshed out gallery that opens up slowly through play. It includes not only promo art, but magazine and print ads, pictures of merchandise, and even more. There's also a cutscene viewer and a fully fleshed out music player with the game's whole library sorted. It's a nice set of features, but there will be a little bit of a letdown when we finally get to Christmas. Believe it or not, Knights isn't just a game series either. Sega put an honest attempt into making the series into a franchise just like Sonic. The first outside piece of media is a Japanese exclusive children's storybook from 1996, Knights Flying Through the Sky Without Wings. It's a slightly more fleshed out retelling of the game's story. There's a rough translation online and the art is absolutely fantastic. There's a really cool sketchy and splotchy style to the art that I don't really think I've seen anywhere else, but it still has really defined characters and bright pastel colors. It's a really impressive set of artwork. Over on the America side of things, to capitalize on the popularity of Sonic's comic series, Knights also got his own Archie series. It came out in 2 3-issue miniseries before ending. Knights is basically Sonic in the comic. He's sarcastic and quippy, and the good guy. I get why he's like this, but There's also a weird origin story about some guy founding Twin Seeds because Knights buried orbs in his yard. It kinda makes the story feel like even 6 pages in, it's trying to fill time. As you'd expect from a crappy American licensed comic, there's also Nightopian comic relief cutesy slapstick characters. One of them is named Snooze, which is spelled S-N-U-Z-E. I can't be late for my music. What did she mean by this? The boss Puffy has a real-world counterpart as Claire's teacher, which kinda works well with the Dreamworld concept, I will admit, but there's nothing really done with it. Elliot's bully also merges with Rayala, kinda like they do with Knights. This is a much worse idea than the previous one. It kinda just forces this weird, cheesy bully character into the story. For some reason, while Elliot is in Knight's body, Knights goes into his body so that they can have awkward fish-out-of-water comedy. It's really fucking lame. It probably goes without saying, but cheap 90s comic art is generally really mediocre, but this comic kinda goes above and beyond and gets even worse in the last 3 issues. The book implies and makes fun of the fact that Elliot's mom has a drinking problem. Wiseman is defeated in Chapter 3, so it's safe to say the 4th will be exciting because Knights is going to the real world. Spoiler, it's not exciting and the arc gets worse. Way worse. Knights becomes a dumb superhero and stops super terrorists. They're actually called that, and he defeats them by burping. These are just my notes I'm reading off. I didn't have the heart to turn this into something else. It's hell. The comic is hell. The comic is pretty awful all around. On top of that, Knights also appeared in the Archie, Mega Man, and Sonic crossover Worlds Unite from like 2015, and an old series of Sega gag manga called Game Gag 1P that aren't available in English anywhere. After its release on the Saturn, Knights would fall to the background. Besides the Christmas Nights demo, the series wouldn't see a game for over 10 years until Journey of Dreams on the Wii, outside of the PS2 remaster and its port to 360, PS3, and PC. Interestingly, part of the reason that there was probably a Wii game is because Shigeru Miyamoto apparently was a huge fan of NiGHTS and said if he could work on one game, he'd want to work on NiGHTS, which may have influenced the decision to put a sequel on the Wii eventually. Despite all this, NiGHTS became something of a fixture at Sega, partially because he was the most popular character of that era of Sega, not that he had much competition. His most well-known appearance is probably having a pinball table in Sonic Adventure's Casinopolis stage, fully kitted out with a quick trip to Spring Valley. NiGHTS is also seen on posters in Sonic Adventure 2, and other small things like that appear in other games. He also became something of a spin-off staple. I won't cover every appearance, but there's a few pinball tables, recurring theme apparently, in Sonic Pinball Party for Game Boy Advance based on the series. He's a secret character in Sonic Riders and Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. There's a NiGHTS-based DLC in Sonic Lost World, and he has many appearances in the Sega Superstars series, having a mini-game in the iToy game, as well as being playable in Tennis and All-Stars Racing Transformed. This is just some of the more major appearances, but Sega has pretty routinely made NiGHTS cameos throughout the years, showing not only Sega's love for him, but the fans' love as well. NiGHTS Into Dreams is an interesting game. There's some moments where the game begins to click and become fun, and the visuals are always neat, but for the most part it's a little too simple. There's no real substance to the game, even going for A ranks boils down to a little memorization and trying for speed, and there's only a handful of levels. It seems to me that it's mostly a case of the game lacking competition on the Saturn and being memorable kinda by default. It's not entirely to say the game is bad or that I never enjoyed it, just that it's very middling outside of its visuals. But that isn't everything about NiGHTS. We need to take a quick detour into Christmas NiGHTS Into Dreams came out right around the time of NiGHTS and is something of a ROM hack of the original game. It was originally released as a demo disc in magazines meant to introduce NiGHTS to consumers, and a very gimped version would later appear on the PS2, Xbox 360, PS3, and PC remastered version of NiGHTS. Christmas NiGHTS, as its name implies, is heavily themed on Christmas, the music, visuals, and even how NiGHTS looks. While it's built on the first game, so much has changed that it almost becomes its own standalone little game. Taking place shortly after NiGHTS Into Dreams, on Christmas of course, Elliot and Claris are walking in Twin Seeds and notice the tower in town, which is decorated like a giant Christmas tree, is missing a star, and decide to use their dreams to make one. After beating the game, they realize that it was all a dream and enjoy their Christmas. I didn't think holding off on the ending was worth it. It's basically just a demo. It's meant to be a cute little Christmas thing since the demo came out near Christmas. The gameplay is of course unchanged from NiGHTS, so we'll move into the visuals and stuff. Imagine NiGHTS, but everything is Christmas. The ideas are Christmas trees, NiGHTS is Santa, there's snow everywhere, and the music is really good renditions of Christmas music, Joy to the World and Jingle Bells. The NiGHTOpians can also somehow be made to sing very awful sounding carols, although I have no idea how one gets this to occur. I like it more than the original. I think the whole Christmas theme is really unique and interesting. Once again, I'm playing on the Xbox 360 version, but unlike the original NiGHTS, Christmas NiGHTS is kinda gimped on the system. On top of the fact that it only has the HD version, no original Saturn version for Christmas NiGHTS, a lot of the unique stuff in Christmas NiGHTS is cut. The Saturn version has 3 additional seasons: NiGHTS Limited Edition, which uses the traditional aesthetic and music of the main game when played from February to October, Winter NiGHTS in November and January, which is a slightly less Christmassy version of the Christmas theme, and New Year's NiGHTS on New Year's Days, which is Winter NiGHTS with slightly different music, while Christmas NiGHTS plays through December, as well as a few other minor changes based on the system clock exclusive to the Saturn version. Santa appearing on Christmas Day, Hearts on Valentine's Day, and playing as Rayala on April Fools, all of this being based on the Saturn system clock, which is cool as hell, honestly. The Saturn version also has some crazy hidden modes that are unfortunately absent in the remake, more on that in a little bit. There are a few changes unique to the HD version though. On Halloween the characters wear Halloween costumes, in July and August Elliot and Claris will wear swimsuits, and the April Fool's Easter egg carries over. Christmas NiGHTS Into Dreams only has 2 stages, each takes place on Claris' first stage, Spring Valley. Claris' stage is the exact same as the full game, same layout and track, just with the previously described Christmas theme, while Elliot plays in the same area, but surprisingly has a new route exclusive to Christmas NiGHTS. Both routes end in a fight against Gilwing, of course recolored to be green, red, and white for Christmas. It's basically a 30-minute game to that end, but the theme is charming, and hell, the game was free as a sampler and it's free as a bonus on the remake, so it's hard to complain too much about it being short. The bonus content is where the remake really falters. This is gonna hurt. Firstly, the A-Life stuff returns in this game, as obscure as ever, but the main bonus is the present system, which is not in the remake. Every time Christmas Nights was cleared on the Saturn version, the player got to play a matching game to win presents. A lot of this stuff was made normal bonuses for the remake, the music player, gallery, and video stuff, but there was also a few extra modes that can be unlocked. One allows the player to play Christmas Nights any time of the year, one unlocks Rael as a playable character outside of April Fools, but most interestingly are 3 alternate game modes, all of which are cut and one of which really hurts. Karaoke mode is a surprisingly common one in Sega games for whatever reason, and displays the lyrics to the game's title theme Dreams Dreams during play, much like Daytona USA's karaoke mode. Time Attack and Link Attack took place on Frozen Bell using that stage's layout from the main game and are score-based challenges, grading speed or combos. The most painful loss is Sonic the Hedgehog into Dreams. The Saturn is infamous for its lack of Sonic, and this game fills that void in a way. While still taking place in Spring Valley, Sonic can't fly. He moves on the ground, runs, and jumps, for the first time in a 3D space no less. The goal is the same, to collect orbs and destroy the idea, although it's a relaxed experience with no enemies or time limit. It's basically a goofy way to explore the levels and give Sonic some much needed Saturn love, complete with its iconic sound effects. Best of all, the thing has a new boss too, with Puffy being reskinned into a hilariously chunky Dr. Eggman in a Santa hat, complete with sound effects that are surprisingly close to his eventual voice in Sonic Adventure. The boss fight is exactly the same as Puffy's, but without the benefit of flight, Sonic kinda has to jump into Eggman in order to be able to grab and throw him. It's a really cool side mode, such a loss that it's stuck on the relatively hard to play Saturn version, although it is playable through emulation, wink wink. Despite being nothing more than a demo, Christmas Nights has had an interesting effect on Knights, who has somewhat become tied to the Christmas season due to it. In Sonic Shuffle on Christmas Eve, Knights will appear as the host of the game, as well as Christmas Nights being a buddy in the mobile game Sonic Runners. It's interesting to see how a simple demo was able to color the series so much. Christmas Nights into Dreams is another interesting aspect of the series. The Saturn version of Christmas Nights is probably better than the original game just due to its huge amount of bonuses alone, but as a bonus itself in the remake, it's a pretty solid game too, I guess. It's charming and perhaps the most Christmas game of all time, which honestly makes me kinda love it just for that aspect of it. The gameplay itself is still whatever, but it's probably the best Christmas game ever made. Doesn't have a lot of competition. Give it an emulate next year. By the way, Merry Late Christmas and thanks for watching.